After you've gotten used to using M2 for edges and Old Pacman for the corners for a while, you might want to consider using R2 for the corners. Now I will warn you, it is significantly harder than M2 for the edges because you have half of your pieces are on the slice that you move to permute the corners, which is R2. And some of the orientations for the L slice are very hard to put into the software piece. Regardless, when you get used to it, it is still faster than Old Pacman for the corners. So it's the same idea as M2. You put the piece from DFR into UBR with R2. And so the goal in the setup moves is to move whatever piece you have down here into this UBR position and get it solved. Now many people will have a problem getting certain orientations from L2 or from the L slice into here. So at the end of the video I'm going to make a list of all of the setup moves I recommend for doing that. More recently, however, I should talk about the edges in the R slice. Unlike M2, where you simply worry about putting them in the right position first, and then at the end you orient them, with the slices in R2, you orient and permute them at the same time. This is because orienting corners is a lot easier than orienting edges. That's as simple as it gets. Yeah, and you have the same idea as with M2. Because R2 is constantly rotating and these two corners are always flipping places. If you have a piece that goes here, if you have a piece in your buffer position that goes here, but you've done an odd number of R2 turns already, then that's going to be down here. So instead of permuting it up here, you permute it down here. And so here are the algorithms for the R slices. For permuting into RFU, you do F prime, R, U, R2, U prime, R prime, F, R, U, R2, U prime, R. And from permuting into RD, B, it's just the opposite of that. It's R prime, U, R2, U prime, R prime, F, R, U, R2, U prime, R prime, F. For permuting to FRU, you use R2, U prime, little r, X, little L2, U, L prime, L, U prime, R prime, U, L prime, U prime, L prime, R prime, U. For permuting to BDR, you don't use the opposite of that. You use RU, R prime, D, little r2, U prime, R, U, little r2, U prime, D prime, R. For permuting to URF, you use U prime, R, F prime, little r, U, R2, U prime, little r prime, F. R, U, R2. For permuting to DBR, you do the opposite of that, which is R2, U prime, R prime, F prime, little r, U, R2, U prime, little r prime, F, R prime, U. For permuting to RUB, you do RU, R2 U prime, R2 U prime, R prime U, RU, R prime U prime, R2 U prime, R2 U. For permuting to BRU, that's almost the same algorithm. You do R prime U, R2 U prime, R2 U prime, R prime U, RU, R prime U prime, R2 U prime, R2 U, R2. For the setup moves, I like to look at them in groups of rotating orientation, which is basically if you're looking at it from the L layer, what these orientations would look like. So this one, this one, this one, and this, sorry. So this one, this one, this one, and this one, they are almost all put into this receiving position in the same way. For this position, you can do L prime, U prime, L, U. You can also do B, L, B prime. For this position, you can do L, U prime, L2, U. You can also do R prime. You have to be careful with that R prime, because you are rotating the R side. You can do R prime, U, L, U prime. Make sure to undo that R. For this position, you can do U prime, L2, U. For this position, you can do U prime, L, U. For this position, you do U prime, L prime, U. And for the rest of the positions that are actually on the L face, you just move it up into that position, do those setup moves, and then undo that move. Now these positions, this one, this one, this one, and this one, are the hardest, and it actually took Stefan Pachmann a long time to develop the best algorithms for these. This position is U prime, F prime, L2, F, U. This position is Y prime, R prime, U2, R, U2, little l, U2, little l prime, U2, R prime, U2, R. For this position, you can do little d prime, L, U prime, L prime, U2, F2, U2, L, U, L, little d. You can also do U prime, L prime, U, L prime, U prime, L, U. For this position, you can either do an L and act like it's this position, or you can do U prime, L2, U, L prime, U prime, L, U. Now, when you have parity using both M2 and R2, which is, like I said, when you have an odd number of edge permutations and an odd number of corner permutations, it should end up looking like this, which is an interesting pattern on the Rubik's Cube, but nevertheless it is not solved, and therefore we must have an algorithm for it. The algorithm is little r2, U prime, little r2, U, and then one of the J perms, L prime, R prime, U2, R, U, R prime, U2, L, U prime, R, and then little r2, U.